All right, hey guys, welcome to Beyond the Books, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of accountingdepartment.com. I am your host, Andrea Boccard, welcoming you to join us. We're going to dive into lessons from the trenches to help entrepreneurs like you listeners grow from building a strong company culture to implementing EOS, mastering leadership, and pretty much everything else. We cover it all. We're not afraid to share our stories with you. Each episode we do is going to feature insights from our leadership team, industry experts, or key figures within our company. So whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking for tips or you're just starting out looking for it all, we are really ready here to offer you advice and inspiration and to share with you what we have done for better or worse, failure or success. And today we're diving into a really meaty topic, and I brought with me two of the heavy-hitting, service-minded accounting experts in the company, Dennis Najjar, our co-founder, and also who sits in the integrator seat in our leadership team, and Abby Jones, our director of client services. Between the two of them, they can tell you years and years and years of experience with delivering client services to our hundreds of clients across accountingdepartment.com. And today we're diving into a really meaty topic that I personally love, that became a topic a few weeks ago due to one random anecdotal story shared. But it is going to focus on the art of firing clients. That's right. Not finding, not hiring, not bringing on, not attracting, not growing, but firing clients. And so Dennis, Abby, firing clients. Why on earth are we admitting to people that we fire clients?
Well,
Dennis,
we're firing clients to work with the best of the best. Life is too short. The demands are too great to deal with individuals who don't respect that. I mean, it really comes down to that.
I think working with the best of the best is exactly right. From an overarching perspective, we want to partner with people that want to partner with us and see the value in what we do, and at the end of the day, provide satisfaction to our staff, because our staff want to work with folks that understand us and appreciate the partnership.
So let's talk about this for a second, because coming off the heels of our last episode, Amy and I were talking about a lot of things we developed in EOS. And one of my favorite things, and one of the things I think that was such a bridge into this topic, is when we decided that our core focus was that we do the right thing. And we do the right thing is a guiding principle at ADC. And I think probably plays right into this topic. And so while I'm sure there's going to be a lot of time spent on all the different variations on why or why not to fire a client, what is it about we do the right thing that sort of creates the framework for this conversation?
Well, you've heard from me, and I know I've been reminded to talk about the why we do things. So today I'm going to give you a little bit more of that why, probably more than you wanted. But I think, everything builds upon everything, right? So I'm going to take you back to when I was a young kid, whatever, 7, 8,
Going
9,
back,
yeah, all the way back.
go back. Let's do
So
it.
I need you to have this picture in your head. I was the short, chubby, four-eyed kid who was awkward in sports and never got picked. I was the leftover, the guy they would put in left field because the ball never went there. I warmed the bench on whatever sport they dragged me into because no one really wanted me. And I think that created for me this idea of being the underdog and wanting to champion for those who were challenged. So I go through my teenage years and I stuck my head down and I got into books. That was my escape to kind of build myself up, to make myself feel better about myself, because that wasn't happening in the social outlets that I had. And then that led to the why, and it built on it. And today, I'm this big advocate for the employees because I'm fighting for them. I said from day one, which I felt from day one, but I don't think I learned to say it until day 7,462, that I am a champion for the underdog. And I am here to make a place, build a company that I would want to work in. And some of the things that I've said over and over again is, why would I want you to work with a client that I myself would not want to work for? Like, that just seems hypocritical. Now you add on top of that my faith, and I can't think like that. I can't say I'm going to make a dime off of somebody's back. In fact, the thing we say to these clients when we exit them out, it's kind of turned into a little bit of a joke. I can't retire on your account. So you're more of a pain in the beep. Or am I allowed to say ass in this thing? I guess I am, right? I can
You
say ass.
are. We're
Okay.
not
All
going to
right. All right. We're not going to edit it. You're more than a pain in the ass than you're worth. And I'm not going to jeopardize the people here to take a few dollars out of your bank account every month to do a job. That's how it all started. So that's more of the why. I know I
Well, let's
thought
talk
about this,
about that.
yeah, and how this kind of built up for me
Yeah.
to what happened in my post-college years.
So that day, that first day, hold on, day 7,462.
Yep.
Which, by the way, for most people, I would assume that's a random number. For you, I actually want to divide by 365 and leap years and figure out what day that was, because I feel like you might have actually figured out your number. Abby,
Get
are you
back to me.
Totally with you.
I totally. Okay, so the day that you decided this is not worth it, this client is not worth it, like, what happened? What happened in your mind where you just went, wait a minute, this is not right. I need to do something else, or what the little boy inside, what did he say?
Well, I'm going to tell you that I learned early on in my career when I was first starting out in accounting on my own, not working for the big public accounting firm. I learned there were two kinds of business owners. You could take this as far as there's two kinds of people, but I'm going to focus in there's two kinds of business owners. There are those that treat their company like a candy store. They take everything they can, they squeeze everything out of it. They cheat their employees and their clients or their customers every opportunity they could get, and they're basically only in it for themselves. And then you have the business owner who puts everybody else first, puts the clients first, puts the employees first, puts everybody first. And when I had clients like that, I looked up to them. When I had a few clients that were candy store, I just couldn't work with them. And so this sort of filtering process for me started when I had my accounting firm in the 90s, saying they're a risk to me. Like, I have a family to protect. I used to, I wouldn't say it then, but it would be something like, there's no amount of money you could pay me that would kind of lead me to cross that line. Because once you cross that right from wrong line as a professional, it becomes a slippery slope that you never recover from. You'll justify everything. And I stayed to that core. And I don't think I'm the only accountant that thinks that way. But I also think there are a lot that like to play that slippery slope, but not for me. Because for me, I felt this was the right thing to do. Again, that's my upbringing, right? That's the experiences I had in watching my father operate in business and seeing how he did everything the right way. He didn't cheat or take or cut corners or any of that stuff. And so I brought that, all this baggage comes with you in your life. And you never really think about it until the later years when you start reflecting, how did I end up here? And it's the culmination of all these things that just get stored away in your hard drive, that they're accessed indiscriminately and randomly to make your decisions on how you run yourself as a person, as a professional, as a business owner, as a parent, as a father, as a husband. And you're either going to fall into one or two camps. You're either a really good person or you're not a really good person. And so it wasn't hard for me. When the first client came along and they were giving somebody a hard time, and I helped myself out unknowingly until day 7,462, that I was going to be the champion for these employees because they were like me when I was sort of the shy, bashful, introverted, awkward kid, and they needed somebody to stand up for them. And that's how it happened. Just said, I'm not going to tolerate it. I can't retire on your account, but I like this person. They've been here. They've been loyal. They've been trustworthy. They've been hardworking. Where is my allegiance going to be? It's going to be with that person who's going to help us move this company forward. So don't get me wrong. It's a two-way street, right? One way is what I'm doing for them, but indirectly, what they've done for me by enabling me to build an organization full of these kinds of people. I sit back now and I watch, and things are running so well, partly because of EOS. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we've got that structure in there, but we always ran it in a structured way. But now we have the right people who have voices, who understand without me ever having to say anything, just see the way I operate, and they know that's what they can do.
Well, so I think
Because that's what they want.
that's a great point. And that is what happened. And Abby, you were the one who brought this idea to our attention when you had a staff member come to you a few weeks ago and reflect on how they couldn't believe that we had chosen a staff member over a client. And Abby, you've joined a couple of years ago. You've been here a few years now. Was this new to you? Was this idea of firing clients, was this something you were comfortable with? Was this something that kind of opened your eyes? Talk to me about your relationship with this concept, especially the day you came in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the, we do the right thing. There are so many companies I've worked at previously, companies I've interacted with, that also have some kind of slogan like that up in their wall, right? And they say, yeah, we do the right thing. We do the right thing. And then something happens where you have a client that is difficult to work with, right? And that can present itself in many forms: unrealistic expectations, treatment of staff, verbal abuse. It can go on, right? And those same companies that have that cheesy slogan up on the wall are like, oh, sorry, we just need you to keep working with them. I know it's not good. Yeah. Anywho, we're going to keep you on that account. And that's the end of the discussion, right? You are expected to deal with clients or customers that are not a good cultural fit. And as an employee, nobody wants to get up and come to work every day when they are dreading, right? They're dreading that call that they're going to get from the client. They're dreading that email. They're dreading having to ask a question because they're scared they're going to get, nipped at or worse by that. They're scared what that person is going to say to their boss. It's an unhealthy environment. And when I came to ADC, I was really blown away that we actually mean it. And the wonderful thing is that we mean it in both ways, right? We always will do right by our clients, right? If we make a mistake, we will own it and we will fix it, right? Two-way street. And when we have got a situation that's untenable for our staff, we will do the right thing by our staff and we will exit working with that client. And I think about the staff that you're talking about, right? The weight that was lifted off of her shoulders, knowing that we had let that client know that we were no longer going to be working with them, even before they were gone, right? Because of course we give a proper notice period. We work with them to make sure it's as smooth as possible. The weight lifted off her was tremendous. And now she's got that pep in her step, that energy back that she can redirect to our fantastic clients who are excited to partner with us. So I, again, was blown away when I came to ADC and continue to be blown away. And I love that I'm able to have a direct conversation with our staff and say, every time we will choose you over a client.
So I have a feeling there are people listening right now, whether it's our own staff or business owners out there who are tuning in, that are wondering where's the line? What is the untenable versus the tenable? What I don't even know if tenable is a word. Did I just make that up? Where does untenable get defined? Like, where do you say, okay, this is a problem client, or this is just a client who had a problem? Like, how do you navigate who has to go and who can be, just like anything else? Talk me through kind of who makes
Uh,
the
Great topic, right? And there isn't a roadmap that says this is exactly, the process, because every situation is different, right? At the end of the day, our clients, just like us, are human. We are most certainly not going to terminate a client because one human at their company had a bad day, right? We've all been there. But when we look at a situation that is an amalgamation of things, right? And we've had a discussion directly with the client to say, these things are unacceptable to us and need to change, and then we don't see that change, that's when we start really moving into the space of saying, okay, now, Andrea, again, it could be a personality misfit, right? Maybe we just need to find somebody different on our team here, right? Maybe we've got, a Chicago Bears fan and a Chicago White Sox fan, and they're never going to agree, right? Maybe it's just time to make a change.
tide, baby, just run. Go Dogs. That's all I know about football, but we got those too.
Maybe we've got a client that is on the East Coast and we've assigned somebody to work with them on the West Coast. And it's just, we thought it was going to work, but it's not, right? So never do we jump immediately to termination. But we take it very seriously. We put a lot of thought into it. We have a lot of discussion because it is a last course of action. It's not something that we want from an ADC perspective to happen very often, and it's not the experience that we want to have for our clients. But when we start seeing those warning signs, that's when myself, Dennis, our other co-founder, Bill, will start getting involved to see what we need to do to remedy the situation.
I like to call it a PIP. Just like you would put an employee on a personal improvement plan to help them get over some obstacle that's keeping them from performing at their optimal amount. In a sense, we do the same thing with the client. We will have conversations with them. We will give them an opportunity. It's not officially written up and put in with HR, but it does have the same message of, hey, we've observed this, and we don't tolerate that here. We can't have you talking down to people. We can't have people feeling uncomfortable when they get on the phone. We can't have staff needing higher level staff to be with them on every meeting. You're not paying for that. And even if you wanted to pay for it, we still don't want to do it. So we have to get to a place where we're working together and we respect each other. And that's where we give them the PIP. We give them that 30 days. We give them that 60 days to reflect and say, am I a client that does the right thing myself, or am
Right.
I one of those who only looks out for myself?
I would
And
imagine
that's why
that's a weird point of reflection for clients, or maybe that people I've never been asked to reflect on that behavior when you have that first conversation. How does that go? How do clients respond?
you know what? You'd be surprised.
Okay.
We've had clients that say, you're right. I know I'm that way. I say, great. And, knowing half your problem, what's the expression? Knowing your problem is half the battle. Yep. Right. Okay. So now we need you to fix it. And then you have others that sit there like, what are you talking about? Me? I'm the perfect model boss. I've got a great company. Everybody in my company loves me. It's perception. It's their own perception. I'm not saying either one does or doesn't work out,
Sure.
but you got to get both things. But I think it's really important, for the audience to hear a little bit. I'm not going to repeat everything Abby just said, but we're not talking about a hangnail problem here, right? We're not talking about if somebody had a rough day and then they get to submit a request to their supervisor that we should get rid of this client. I mean, this really has to be legitimate, and it's not something that's fixable. So we have to go through that process of attempting to do it. but it isn't one of those, talk out of both sides of your mouth. And, that's one of the things that I guess I've said, and I don't need to say it anymore. I've always been a big proponent of put your money where your mouth is. Everybody could talk, talk is cheap, but action is a whole different ballgame. And so from that perspective, that's the way we've handled it. I would say another kind of internal assessment I wanted to, throw out there. When we end up talking about a client too many times, like they're a regular topic of discussion about what's going on, somewhere around, I don't know, fourth to the sixth time, I raised my hand and I said, guys, we got a problem here. I mean, this is not going away. Either we can fix this or we can't, but just like an employee that's not able to meet up the standards of just like we have high standards for our clients, we have high standards for our staff too. No one gets a pass because they're protected by me being the underdog. Everybody has to prove their worth. And if we have to talk about an employee too many times because they're not complying, they're not adhering, they're not adjusting, they're not living up to our expectations, I'd say it's time for a change.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I'm aware of this sort of not issue, but this thing at ADC that we're constantly working on, which is getting employees to speak up. And I have a feeling that we're not unique in that situation. There's probably companies everywhere, especially service-based companies, where a lot of the employees who are servicing clients maybe don't feel empowered to come to the table with these issues or concerns. Maybe they're worried they're going to be seen as someone who complains. Maybe they're worried that this is going to be a reason against them or a mark against them. Now, I know that both of you put a lot of effort into creating an environment where people feel like they can come to you. But talk me through this so that the people who are listening can figure out how they can do the same thing, or even, because this environment did not always exist naturally, how did you get to this point where people will come and talk to you about a problem? How are you creating a culture where employees feel that they can say, hey, this guy's being nasty to me?
One of the things I think is most powerful is a term that I like to call positive gossip. And when an employee is in a situation where something has happened and we exit with that client, there is no finer compliment than them saying to the other people that they work with, you're never going to believe this. They actually terminated my client because they were treating me poorly. That speaks volumes, way more volume than Dennis and I saying, and it people hear those things and it means something to them. They also know that what they're not hearing are things like we had talked about earlier, right? Where people are like, yep, they're awful to me, but ADC won't get rid of them, right? ABC won't deal with the problem. They're not hearing that because we're actively involved. And I think that is the number one thing that companies need to hear. They need to see evidence that slogan that you've got up on the wall really means something, because until they can see it in actual fact, it is just a slogan.
I love that. The proof is in the pudding.
100%.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. No, I love
the other
that.
thing that I think is a big part of this is our management teams across the board have their ear to the ground to listen for potential rumbling. We can't be on every client call. We can't read every client email. We can hear snippets, right? And our team are enabled to say, now wait a minute, are you saying to me that this XYZ behavior happened? We need to talk about that, right? And jump in and nip things in the bud. And that enablement throughout all layers of the organization is also a big part of the success.
But I would acknowledge that it is, I'll use the phrase, it is a bit of a battle to get people to come forward because they are conditioned not to question. Like, who am I as this low-level employee in this huge company to be challenging, in this case, a client? And so there is a lot of that. And I think they've probably also come with bad experiences of having worked with negative clients, if you will, and that it was known throughout the company, yet they the company did nothing about it. So they don't want to necessarily say something with the fear that they are now being the squeaky wheel and they're a troublemaker and they're not happy or they don't appreciate or any of those things. So they just keep their mouth shut and they grin and bear until, I guess you could say, is one day they decide they can't take it anymore and then they quit. Now we don't have that happen, but I would imagine that's how it goes in other places.
I'd
I
also like to say, whether if you're listening to this, you're probably in some type of customer service industry, right? So whether you're doing the services that we're doing or something completely different, at the end of the day, we're hiring people who have great customer service skill sets, and they want to please our clients, and that can feed into it as well, right? To Dennis's point, perhaps they have an expectation that, well, sometimes part of being customer service is being treated poorly. And that needs to change, right? Like they can't think with that filter on it anymore now that they're here at ADC.
Well, I think, and you know what, I think that it speaks to an area that people get a little uncomfortable talking about. And that is that area where you mix profit with retention and long-term profit versus short-term profit. And I think that that's an area we haven't yet kind of dove into, but we should probably get there because, we talk about this a lot. There's a prioritization that creating this positive work environment will improve staff retention, number one. And that number two, short-term losses by firing essentially revenue producing clients will create long-term growth and gains. So let's kind of go that way. And we have spent I would say a couple of years really focusing on making sure that our clients are reflecting our values and making sure that we've really kind of shored up our clients to make sure we have a really great area, which has led to some great benefits. So it's not all just see ya, you suck. Like there's an opportunity there to really focus on the positive. So let's talk about what are some of the positive aspects that we've seen in this company as we have really hyper focused on making sure that everybody in the door should be in the door?
You're exactly right. And when we think about short-term profit versus long-term profit, right? To Dennis's point, when we've got a client that we just keep talking about, the internal cost associated with that is huge, right? And being able to pull out a client that is draining our resources allows us to be able to replace them with somebody that, again, better fits into our mold and what we do and doesn't have that sandstorm of craziness around it because of all the consternation. So it also allows us, again, to retain staff, which allows us to bring in additional clients. And ADC does a phenomenal job in the marketplace, and we have an opportunity to continue to bring on clients if we've got staff, and we would rather have them focused on clients that are a great cultural fit for us versus clients that aren't.
There's definitely a lot of soft costs that go into these problems. Abby is just touching upon it. But then you have somebody wants to be off an account because there's not a good mixture. So we move that person, but now we have to invest in the next person to come along and train. And, we have a ramp up period that we absorb. That's part of our arrangement, if you will, with clients. And so another example of a soft cost that goes in, sometimes we have to add another person in to assist because there's challenges of that client. All of these are soft costs. And they do add up. And as a company, as the leadership team, we now acknowledge that, and that's why we are dealing with these situations in a more expedited manner, but not in an irrational way of just you're out the door you go. We're focused on them faster, and we're assessing them more, and we're looking for incremental improvements. And if we don't see it, then we're, if you will, more apt to pull the trigger and help somebody out the door. But it doesn't end that way because we still do the right thing. We give, our agreements are 90-day agreements for the most part, and somebody could stay up to 90 days. And we've got to keep that face going for 90 days. We have to ask that staff that, listen, listen, we did our part. We've asked them to move on, but now you have to do your part, because we don't want to give them any excuses to say their service went down or that the professionalism went down. You've got to, keep up the way that we operate for the next 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is. And they do. They always
Yeah.
do.
But that's such an
But
interesting point, because you've literally stamped this like, see you
dead.
later, you're out the door, reject,
Yeah.
you did not pass, do not do the right thing. You have stamped this client as that, and then you turn around and you tell the staff, hey guys, but we still do the right thing, which means we owe them this stuff. Now, I love that, because as far as I'm
Well, I got
concerned,
a better one for you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I got a
go
better
ahead.
one. We had a particular client that and they asked us for an extension. It's not really the first time this has happened. This happened a
Right.
couple of times. And I personally went back to the staff and made the appeal for you, meaning the staff, to do the right thing and give them a 60, I think they wanted a 60-day extension or something. Because it's the right thing to do. And they completely got it. They understood. They know, I mean, again, when you operate the same way day in and day out, you don't wear different colors for different days. People respect that. That's what they want in leadership, right? They don't want this fly by the night. What are you doing today? What's your attitude today? What do I have to prepare myself today? It's always the same. It's boring. That's how consistent it is.
It's predictable.
It's so boring. It's
Doing the
predictable.
right thing every day.
And I went there, and all sincerity, I said, I know this is not an easy thing for me to ask of you, but could you possibly see your way to sticking through this for another, whatever it was, 30, 60, 90 days? And I gave them the reasons, and they said yes, they would do it. And they did it as well as they did leading up to their expiration of the first, end
Yeah.
of service date, which, I mean, it just makes me warm inside to say, that's doing the right thing, right? No matter what the situation is. People can never look back and say, they stuck it to me. They left me high and dry. They abandoned me in my moment of need, or whatever the excuses are. And that's just the way I've always operated my life, my professional career. You do the right thing because you have to wake up with yourself tomorrow, and you
So
look back at that.
now, I would imagine this creates an opportunity for us to also have a lens where we can watch employees self-select into the same mindset or not. So how does, in this sense, how does that viewpoint play out in the greater perspective of managing all of our staff, Abby? How do we take this in terms of, focusing on the clients that are the right fit and not having the right fit, and then also ensure that we've got that right people, right seat mentality, and how that affects the ability to determine, like, are the employees in the right place?
I mean, that's a big question.
I'm just slinging stuff at you. Just Abby, what do you think?
It is important, right? Going back to this discussion, we had talked about a little bit earlier. Sometimes we do have the wrong person in the wrong seat, right? And so, if a client, what appears to be a client situation could be the wrong person on our team, right? And that's on us as leaders to work with our staff and make sure that they are in the right seat. At the end of the day, it's one of my favorite things about EOS. If you've got a great employee that is in the wrong role, or maybe they've been assigned to the wrong client, they're not going to be living up to their best potential, and we're going to lose them, because nobody wants to go to work every day if they're in the wrong seat. And having that, the culture that we have, as we're talking about today, terminating clients, it also goes around to the culture that we have to support our employees and making sure that they are in that role that they feel like they can be most successful in.
So
I,
last,
I would,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'll add a couple of things to that. I think that one of the things that we do a really good job at, and for anybody who's listening to this, I think this happens during your selection process. I mean, you should be evaluating your client not only for whether it's a good fit, but also for who would best work with that client. And when we go to the staffing meeting every week and we talk about some clients and who needs what, we're always getting feedback. Initially, it's from implementation because that's who sees the client first. They have a really good sense of what that client is like and the kind of person that would work best with them. And while we, do our best to accommodate that, there are situations in which we don't know that, and then later on, as Abby described, we'll make a reassignment to kind of get a better personality fit. But it does start during your prospecting phase, and that is, do these prospects present themselves in such a way that you would want them as a client? It's easy to sell anybody. It's difficult to keep them, right? And the other thing I just do want to add is, while we have a whole podcast around this one topic, this is a really small percentage of our business. We're not like turning over dozens and dozens of clients on a monthly basis. We're
That is
turning
very
over.
important. That is very important to know. We are not just firing clients at whim
We're
here.
not we're not just bringing them in and firing them and bringing them in
Well,
and firing them.
I think you have definitely driven home what it goes into even making that determination. But you know what you just kind of said quickly, but that I think deserves a little more time is and especially for entrepreneurs in a service-based business that have this same, B2B process of long sales cycles and implementation, all these things. Something that I think we do really, really well and that we don't exactly like publicize, because why would you? Is the amount of touch points and data we gather from day one of a prospect walking in the door all the way through implementation and through client services, where we are getting feedback from every person in our company that touches them as to their fit in terms of our target market and what's a good client for us, their potential for being a good client, where they might be a good fit in terms of the staff members, everything from their expertise to their personalities. I mean, we even present on sales calls about incoming clients and sort of drum up interest in specific areas. We're very sensitive to what is it's almost like the matching game, like for those of you who remember the old school dating game show, it's got a similar vibe to that. So I think, to your point, not only do we not just fire clients for fun, we actually have such a finely honed process of analyzing and placement and staffing that in order to fail, it really has to have been like an extreme circumstance, because we're checking in on a regular basis. Let's talk about their first days here and implementation. With the feedback that we get from their first team influences their suitability, and all of this is set up not to fire the client, but to make them
Right.
successful, just like
Right.
our training process. So
Yeah.
let's talk about all the ways, because this is really important, all the ways we put effort into different points to make clients as successful as possible.
Well, I think you just summarized them all.
Well, yes, I did. I gave you all the talking points.
Do
Well,
we have
but let's Dennis, look, you're right now, though we are not planning to keep you there forever, but you are right now in our main proposal seat also. So you're
Right.
meeting with all the prospective clients before they walk in the door, and you are
Right.
one of the touch points reviewing for suitability.
Yeah.
So talk me through what it is you're actually looking for when you're sort of analyzing these clients in that phase.
A lot of different things. I'm looking for their engagement in the conversation. Do they even come, or do they send a proxy? Because sending a proxy to me is problematic, because ultimately the proxy has no authority. When you get on, it's just kind of the general mindset. Are they engaged, or are they off doing something else and like half listening to, just going through the motion because all they want is a proposal, type of thing. The questions they ask, the needs, the expectations, do they line up? Their way of doing business, are they, a traditionally, I'm going to call it brick and mortar, paper centric, with this idealistic view that they're going to convert over to this electronic world that we live in for 20 something years? Some can do it, but many can't. They're just looking for a solution to a problem. And it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. So sure, it sounds great. I'll give it a try kind of thing. It's just how they interact with each other on the phone. If there's a couple of people from there's just so many dimensions to it that, I'm kind of evaluating, and we've historically been evaluating when we had the proposal manager in that seat, to make our own assessment as to whether or not we think it's a good fit. Because if it's not, then it's probably not a good idea to bring them on. And now that sounds like you get to decide life and death, and that's maybe easier for me to do as an owner than it is for an employee to do. But we do offer opportunities. We record these conversations. Someone else can listen to it and give their take on how it went. But it is important to look at all the feedback that you're getting to try to make a decision as to whether or not you think. And some are questionable. There's no doubt about it. And of those some that are questionable, some work out beautifully. They may have just been uncomfortable. They may have had something going on at that point in their day that they got distracted. But there are some that, they hold that they're true to form, and they end up being what you were fearful of when you went through the process of prospecting with them.
I would throw in there as well, obviously, we're talking about terminating clients here, but as we're going through the sales process, one of the things that we also want to see are clients that have the potential for a great long future with us, right? That is the best situation for us and our clients, right? When we've had a client 5 years, 10 years, they know us, we know them. It's spectacular, right? We're not looking to bring on clients who are looking to come get their books cleaned up and leave us. And that, I think our sales team and our proposal team do a fantastic job of really making sure that we are signing up clients that want to partner with us. And when they want to partner with ADC, chances are we're not going to ever have to have a termination discussion with them, because they're going to be engaged in a positive way with our teams.
And I think that's such a great point, because if we're all doing essentially our jobs and going by what we've set up structurally with EOS, and also just as a company, and we're making sure that everybody fits the bill for what we've determined, they will fit the bill for wanting to partner with us, for being a good client fit, for having that. It's where we derail from the process we agreed upon. And I think that's so important for entrepreneurs to hear, especially the ones who are, earlier in their journey, who are starting to develop these structures, who are starting to sort of define and clarify, because maybe they haven't quite figured out exactly who their target market is. Maybe they're still in those early stages. I mean, Dennis, I know that you and Bill can both talk about the client you took because you needed a client, because you needed revenue. And that's there are absolutely people listening right now that are in that situation that are like, well, be great if I could afford to fire a client, but right now that's not an option. And that is true. That is valid. We see you. And we are not saying that, oh, forget it, you have to fire a client just because. We're in this great position because we've grown to this position, because we've held true to standards, but because we've also had our trajectory go in that direction where we could start to develop that. There are certainly earlier stage businesses that don't have that same ability, but I would venture that, like, main priority in your growth should be to get to that point where you can really sort of start to refine what that looks like. But when our systems work, and Abby, you're the recipient in a lot of ways. It goes from sales to implementation to you, and you're getting it, and you didn't have a say necessarily, but you do have the ability to look at it and go, hey, somebody let this derail. What happened here? Why am I dealing with this? And hopefully more and more recently, you're getting it and going, way to go, guys. You checked the boxes, and this is going to be a great fit. But I think those conversations are really important, and they started our leadership team. And Dennis, in your seat as the integrator, I think that you've had a lot of experience having to navigate between company growth and revenue, company principles and structure, and merging the two. And Abby, you're his right hand on that same conversation. So, any conversations you'd like to share with everybody that might help them kind of navigate these choppy waters as they're in them? I mean, we're still in these choppy waters on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, I would say being up at the top, the hardest thing to do for anybody who's trying to get that foothold is to stay true to your objective. And that was not trying to be everything to everybody, but figure out what it is you're trying to deliver, and look for that only. Yes, you're going to have these little, especially in the early years. And that example, by the way, was year 2, not year 18, where we took that client for the revenue. But yeah, those are totally different times.
Everybody's got a year 2.
Well, exactly. No, and you have to start there. And I can't magically tell you when that started to shift, but as we began expanding and you brought in more people, you started looking at things differently. Maybe at that point we began to have that core and we said, let's build around that core. Let's not take on this application or that application or this industry we know doesn't work, so forth and so on. And it's really hard to turn those things away when they're at your door. But I assure you that you'll be much better off if you stick to your core and you wait for the right opportunities to come along, rather than becoming this big potpourri of anything to everything to everybody, and not having really an identity of your own that can stand out, that you can apply to both internal and external scrutiny.
I don't know what to add to that. That's great, Dennis.
Well, so Abby, I actually have a question for you on that one. So right now there's somebody sitting in your seat at another company who is sandwiched between co-founders in their direction and having to oversee a lot of the service providers, the staff who do all the services. And maybe they're sitting there going, man, I wish I could be Abby right now, because Abby seems so clear cut in how she's handling this. What advice would you give to somebody in your seat that maybe isn't as defined right now? How would you tell them to best serve those tugging sides?
I have sat in a similar seat at other companies, and you can really get stuck in the middle, right? When you have got owners that are on a different page than your staff, and you're the one stuck in the middle, right? You're the one receiving the complaints about the staff, but your hands are tied and you can't do anything about it because you're not getting the right direction up here. Even worse, when you're at a company that has great values, like we do the right thing, and the staff see it, but they also see that it's not being enforced, right? My recommendation would be, if you're in a spot like that, you need to start doing some work at your company, right? Because everybody needs to be operating on the same set of principles, right? The same set of values. While, Dennis and Bill and I and the other leaders of the company like you, Andrea, gosh, we have healthy discussions and healthy disagreements all the time. But at the end of the day, we are all following those same basic things, which makes my job easy, because again, I'm not stuck in the middle. I'm not trying to be in a situation that I can't solve. And I also know, without exception, that Bill and Dennis not only have the staff's back, they have my back. And so I'm not in a situation where I feel like I can't say what needs to be said, either to our staff or to our clients, because we are all on the same page. And I know that they will support my decision making. And so if you're sitting in a role like I am at a company and you feel like your decision making is not being honored or not being respected, again, it's time to start having some tough conversations, because that is not a situation that anybody wants to be in long term.
I love that. I do. And I think
that's great.
I think that really where we've gotten to today, and I think the takeaways that listeners can go with are really, creating that structure, having these conversations. These are a lot of areas that we got to by, one, determining what our values are, and then also creating a structure around them in which to operate. And so I would say that those are a couple takeaways that I've come up with. What would you want as the top 3 things for people to take away if they're going, you know what, I want to fire a client? What tips would you give somebody if you just had to boil it down to 3 things?
Number one would be make sure that you've done everything that you can do to see if the situation is salvageable.
I would agree. Yeah, you have to definitely do your homework, right? You just can't jump to a conclusion because someone might not get along with somebody, you know, all those variations. I would say definitely doing the right thing once you let them go. You know, maintaining your same standards as if they're going to be here forever and not diminishing the quality of what you're delivering so that that leaves them with that bad taste. If anything, you're going to leave them with the taste that they wish they could have more of it, and they're not going to get it now.
Take the high road.
Take the high road. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Every time. The third and last thing I would say is, if we only can have 3, is know your value, know your worth, right? You've built a great brand, you've built a great company, you've got a great future, and you shouldn't sell yourself short and keep clients that don't fit the mold for a myriad of reasons. Know your worth.
You know, as I reflect on this whole conversation that we've had, I mean, I hope it does resonate with some business owners who do get the opportunity to listen to it. But it's also natural. Like, none of this is something I had to plot out on a pad and say, I'm going to run my business this way. And I guess it just goes back to those 2 kind of high level profiles of that business owner that I first kind of understood in my early days in my own practice in the 90s, which was, you're either the guy who's doing the right thing or you're a guy who's only looking out for yourself, guy or gal. But it comes naturally. It's not something that had to be forced or, you know, you had to remind yourself over. And so I feel for those who don't have that, because they're missing out on so much when it comes to personal satisfaction, satisfaction of your employees, and ultimately satisfaction of your clients, because those that are satisfied are going to deliver that much more to the clients that we do have, because they do see the value both ways. So that would be my parting words in this episode here, is to, you know, really reflect on how you operate as a person first and foremost, because all of this comes from how you are as a person, not as a business owner. And then, are you overlaying that, or are you a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? You know, personally you're one way, but at the business you're totally different. I guess that's possible.
It sounds like clarity is really just so important, and having that clearly defined purpose, clearly defined team, clearly defined structure, what you will and won't accept and who you are, all of that comes from having significant clarity, which you 2 have in droves. And I very much appreciate you sharing your experience with this. I know that talking about firing clients is sometimes it makes you nervous to say these things and to come out and say it, until you realize that even just saying it was the right thing, because you're not firing willy-nilly, you're firing them for cause. So I appreciate that, because I have a feeling there are a lot of people that listen to this and heard some sort of purpose or light bulb moment that they can take into their own business and grow from that. So first, thank you for joining us today and sharing all these insights on this. Next episode, we're actually going to take this and run with it, because we are going to be talking about the importance of transparency. And transparency started with sharing that we fire clients, which was not something anybody was comfortable saying even a few weeks ago publicly. I suppose we were comfortable, but we weren't sure we were going to go with it. So we got that far, and now we're going to take it a whole step further and talk about why transparency is just so important to having a successful growing business. And so that is going to wrap it up for today. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Abby, for sharing all of this with us, for joining us today. I know that you will be back very soon to share lots more with us. But for now, that is it for us on Beyond the Books, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Dennis.